Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 95. As always, I'm joined by Jordan.
PlayStation.
And Tom.
Boy, get my axe.
Get my axe. Yeah, can't wait to hear what both of you guys have been doing with God of War. I guess we'll just hop into it. Very busy week for me once again. I didn't have time to play anything. The only free time I had was actually spent watching Spider-Man, Thor, and Black Panther on separate days, because those were the last three movies I needed for my MCU rewatch. So the only free time I had, I used on those. Yeah, well, yeah, that was like most important to me, because obviously the premiere, the night of us recording this. One thing I want to say is I didn't like Thor Ragnarok as much as I liked it the first time. Not that I dislike it, but like in my memory, I thought of Thor Ragnarok as like a top 3 movie for me. And then me rewatching it, it's I think I listed it finally at like 7 or something.
I don't think the humor lands, and I think the humor lands in most of the Marvel movies, but I feel like they were trying a little hard in Ragnarok.
Yeah, there's just some parts.
It definitely feels like kind of they're trying to be Guardians.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And then Black Panther was as good as I remember it being. And then for me, Spider-Man Homecoming was just as good, if not better, rewatching it. And then I just realized how like emotional the scene is where Peter gets trapped under the building when Vulture like destroys the building with a suit, and he's like crying for help like a kid. And just it's really emotional. And I thought Tom Holland's acting there was really good, and saying, "Come on, Spider-Man, let's do this." And obviously, it's iconic of the comic shot of him doing the same thing. Just a very powerful scene. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in the MCU. Since I don't have a whole lot to talk about gaming, the other thing I want to touch on is, since I was mentioning the MCU, I'll give you my personal top 5 movies. I went through and obviously watched them and ranked them as I watched them. So
nice.
from 5 to 1, Winter Soldier is number 5. Captain America: Winter Soldier. Number 4, I have Guardians of the Galaxy. A lot of people seem to like 2 more than 1. I still prefer 1 to 2 personally. I like 2 a lot, but just 1 had something special about it in my opinion. Captain America: Civil War was number 3. Black Panther was number 2 for me, and Spider-Man: Homecoming far and away is my number 1. Yeah, it's even tough for me to. I actually went back a couple of weeks ago and tried watching the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, and like, just to me, they don't really hold up. And it's not necessarily like Tobey Maguire playing Peter. I don't like the set design. Like, I don't think the way the sets were designed in those movies really hold up. Like a lot of stuff in the Osborn house seems very set dressing. Like, it feels like you're watching like a sitcom from the 90s or something where they're obviously on set, if that makes sense. It just doesn't ring well for me. But I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I don't need to go on and on about it, but like, far and away my favorite movie in the MCU. Which is funny because before I did this MCU rewatch, Winter Soldier was far and away my number 1. And yeah, it's really cool going back and watching all of these movies. The other funny thing is, watching these movies, I went through and ranked all of the villains in the movies, and I'm not going to give the top 5 or anything. But as far as like the top 3, Killmonger was my favorite villain throughout all of the movies. Obviously, a lot of his actions are justified to some extent, and he kind of wins at the end of that movie, partially, for what T'Challa ends up doing and, opening Wakanda to the world. Number 2, Helmut Zemo from Civil War. I just like a villain that doesn't need to fight a superhero with his fists. It's very Lex Luthor-esque in some stories. Obviously, there's stories where Lex Luthor like gets a Krypton suit and like.
Now he's basically in an Iron Man suit in Action Comics currently.
Yeah, so I really appreciated Helmut Zemo, which it's a little pet peeve of mine that everyone calls him Baron Zemo, which he's not. He's actually, in this movie, he's Helmut Zemo, his son. And then Crossbones in that movie too, though he was in the very beginning. I thought they did him well and kind of wrote him off and let him be what he was. And he was actually kind of important to the story, obviously, with Scarlet Witch moving his explosion and accidentally killing all those people. And then last I have Vulture, Shocker, and Tinker, the Homecoming group. I thought Vulture's motivations and like that scene with him in the car with Peter when they're going to the homecoming dance is terrifying. It's terrifying, and like I love the use of lighting, where it's like it's red light, red light, red light, and then it clicks to him that he's Spider-Man, and the light turns green on his face, which matches Vulture. Yeah, I thought Michael Keaton did a great job as Vulture. So good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like a close four is Winter Soldier and Hydra in Winter Soldier, because just seeing somebody like that, I like the covert agent that you don't know about. So that's pretty much it. The other thing I wanted to touch on is I actually was able to finish Ultra Moon as well, the main campaign or whatever. So at the end of the game, they have the Elite Four like every other Pokemon, which I enjoyed. It's a little bit different. But yeah, like I said before, this isn't probably in my top 5 Pokemon games if I'm ranking them. No. I didn't like I liked a lot of the mechanics they introduced, and a lot of the fact that they got rid of HM slaves, and it's actually a separate thing where you get ride Pokemon. I think that's really smart.
Fucking term, dude. HM slaves.
Well, that's what they were, man.
Yeah.
You would get Eradicate, and you would put Strength and a bunch of other HMs on it, and be like, yeah, dude.
I mean, let's slow down and talk about how like fucked up the idea of owning Pokemon and making them fight each other is. Different conversation, though, if we're going to be politically correct.
Yeah. I mean, but there is plenty of Pokemon trainers who don't even fight either. So
they faint, they don't die, Dom.
Yeah, and there's a whole argument of like, they're not necessarily fighting against their free will, depending on the trainer. So
yeah, Pokemon enjoy fucking each other up, I think.
Yeah, they don't kill each other. Well, the like normal Pokemon fights, they don't kill. They're not meant to kill each other. They just knock them out.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, I didn't like the whole stop-start nature of a lot of the narrative in the game. For me, the best Pokemon games are the ones that give you like a lot of narrative and then a big chunk of the game to like free roam and talk to people if you want to, but kind of explore and rinse and repeat. This game was very much narrative, a little bit of exploration, narrative, a little bit of exploration. Like it was just stop and start over and over and over. But a lot of the systems they introduced were really cool. So if the next Pokemon game or one of the next couple of Pokemon games is another remake of Gen 1 with all of these new mechanics and features, I'm super down. I just wasn't into the way the islands were laid out and just the narrative in that game personally. So yeah,
I really could not stand having to like take care of your Pokemon. You'd have to brush the dirt off them after a battle or like rub them down to pet them. Yeah, but it's a big stat boost. It's like you could ignore it, but to me it was like, well, I need to do this shit because it's going to make my Pokemon that much more powerful, and it is significant. So I felt like
that sounds cool.
From my own experience, I did need to do it, and I was like, this fucking sucks because you're just not as long. It's not like quick and simple like you think. Like you're sitting there for a minute, especially if you're going through your whole party.
Yeah, and
Pokemon.
Yeah, the way I do it is I'm a very grind heavy person in Pokemon games.
Yeah,
they call me Brock. That's a sex joke because Brock is
okay.
But yeah, I grind a lot in Pokemon games, and then I like to be at least like 5 levels over the gym leader, or at least I kind of assume what their level is. Some of the post game stuff is cool. They have Team Rocket coming back, which is really nostalgic. And yeah, it's an interesting game. I enjoyed my time with it. It was great because it's a game, because it's mobile. I didn't have to be at my house and be able to pick up and play a game. I was able to get it in short bursts, and that's why I was able to finish it the way I was. But now that the MCU rewatch is out of the way and stuff, like you said, Dom, it was a lot of my free time that was taken up. That's Black Panther's almost 2.5 hours, Spider-Man's almost 2.5 hours, and Thor Ragnarok I think is like 2 hours and like 10 minutes. So it's like 6 hours I could have spent doing other stuff, but I wanted to do it. So now that that's out of the way, I have a lot more time, and I was trying to cram him in. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Played more of Marvel Strike Force, the mobile game, too, in my spare time, tapping away. Unlocked Drax, which is pretty exciting. Though I'm scared that he's going to be somebody that we don't see after Avengers Infinity War and 4. I think he may be somebody that kicks dirt, but we'll see.
Do you read any more comics?
No, like I'm still on volume 2 of all new Wolverine, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. So just bouncing off of some of the stuff you were talking about, I caught up with The Walking Dead this week, the comic. great shit, man. I fucking love that book. I really love Robert Kirkman as a comic writer. Very talented, and obviously you guys know I love Invincible. I'm also a big fan of Outcast, which is a horror series that he does about possession, which is still pretty early on. I don't think it's past 35 issues yet. So I'd definitely recommend that one. Easy to get into. And then he just started Oblivion Song, which is about there being this kind of like rift that opens up in America, and all these people disappear into a parallel dimension that you can jump back and forth between, but the people that are stuck there don't really know that. So there's this guy trying to rescue people out of it, and there's all these fucked up monsters over there. So it's a pretty cool series so far. It's only 2 issues in, but definitely shout out to Robert Kirkman and The Walking Dead. So much fucking better than the show, guys. I mean, I know we all watch the show, and it is a struggle sometimes. And Dom, you really couldn't stand the season finale, or I thought it was pretty much par for the course. I mean, it's not any worse than most of the season has been, in my opinion, which is not great. And so, but it's worth noting, Fear the Walking Dead.
I still gotta finish up season 3. And I'm gonna do that soon.
It is fucking dank, guys. It is dank. Yeah, so I've talked about Fear the Walking Dead, I think, on the show since it started, and season 1 was decent. 2 was actually pretty rough, like pretty bad.
Man.
3 was good, and now 4 is fucking great. So it's definitely...
I think the one thing about that show, the thing I appreciated the most that they did, and I bet they got a lot of flack for it, but I was like, hell yeah, like, screw it. Like, they killed, I'm not going to say who, but they killed a character entirely off screen. A main character entirely off screen. And you just come to find out, and I was like, that's fantastic, because that's how, that would happen way more than it does.
Yeah.
In the regular show, there was way too much, especially with like Rick and Daryl, like, oh, it's a close call, right. Or they go missing for a while and they always end up coming back. Like, it's like, you know, they're not gonna die, and I hate that, especially this many seasons in. That shit's pissing me off. But in Fear, yeah, one of the main characters, they just said, yeah, we just killed him and he wasn't even there. They tell you how it happened and stuff, but yeah, totally off screen. So
do they tell it or do they show it? They don't show it at all?
Not an actual flashback, but like a... Yeah, let's just do it.
Okay, spoilers Chris, for Fear the Walking Dead. I'm not remembering who you're talking about. Go ahead and mention it.
They don't show it, do they?
Oh, yeah. Well, they kill him. They don't, but like, he was dying. He broke his leg really fucking bad and wasn't able to like, keep going. And so it's like, yeah, I had to kill him. But yeah, he was already on his way out.
It's probably they don't want to show a kid getting killed on screen too, right? I assume.
I don't know. I thought that was cool. But I like that show.
Okay.
The first 2 seasons. I still have to get through season 3. I'm pretty psyched because it just came on Hulu, so.
Yeah, season 3 is actually pretty cool, and then season 4 has been great. They
oh my god,
Morgan in, which the shit that he's been doing on the main show is fucking stupid. I'm so tired of his bullshit of like, I don't kill, yes I do.
Don't even get me started on Jesus.
That's not us, Morgan. I'm Jesus, and I'm here to tell you
reached a breaking
that's
point.
not who we are. Like, fuck off. But Dom, I'm here to tell you, Dom, that his transition over into Fear is great. It's really well done.
Okay.
It makes sense.
I'm going to get it going.
He fits better over there, I think, and so it's really... I'm totally happy with it. Yeah. Hit it up for sure.
I have one question. I don't want to spoil it for Dom, so I'll ask Dom instead.
Well, it starts in L.A.
The show starts in Mexico. Where are they at now?
I think,
in the point of view watching
I don't know where... Season 2, are they in?
California.
I think they're in, like, New Mexico or Mexico. It's all in Mexico? Okay, I can't remember. It was like a year ago, and I fucking watched it.
No,
but...
season 2 is straight up in Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah. And then season 3 is back in America, and 4 is in America.
Nice.
So yeah, Fear the Walking Dead's good. The comic, so much better than the show. There's so many characters that are just they've just turned into fucking degenerates on the show and are just awful to have to watch. But in the comic, they're just they're all so compelling. They handle the characters so much better in the comic, and people get their dues, and the characters that you like go through tough shit. Some of them die, but it all feels earned and respectful of the characters and the story, and it's just so much better. So if you're a big Walking Dead fan out there, I totally recommend it. And it's the best piece of Walking Dead media in my
how would you, if you were going to start from the beginning,
the Telltale games and the shows,
how would you do it? Anything. Would you buy like those big ass compendiums or whatever?
Yeah.
I did it recently. I just bought a volume.
I would
volume
prefer to do it
I buy
digitally.
Volumes. The compendiums are a good way too.
Buy, like, each,
the way I'm going is
book one by one. I'm like, ugh.
Well,
okay, so you can actually buy the whole thing
trade
digitally.
Paperbacks that Jared's talking about on Comixology.
You can buy the
you
chunk.
You could choose all three. You could do individual issues, trades, which are what, like 6 issues, Jared?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trades are 6 issues.
The compendiums are probably like 30 or so, maybe.
Right.
But then, of course, once you got closer and closer, you'd have to switch to single issues if you're like about to catch up. There's 178 right now. 179 is coming out at the beginning of May. But yeah, and the stuff that they're doing right now is really fucking cool. But yeah, highly recommend the Walking Dead comic. Highly now recommend Fear the Walking Dead season 4 on AMC's The Walking Dead. So besides that, I've read a bunch of other comics, but I'll move on from the comic realm. Actually, big shout out to Lock and Key by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son. Really cool comic. I won't go too much into what it is, but I heard about it from the Kind of Funny morning show comic book segments that they used to do, and kept going with it, and finished it today. Very, very good comic, so recommend that as well. As far as God of War goes, you were asking about that, Jared. Dom and I think are in similar spots 6, 7, on that game. What, like 5-6 hours in, maybe, Dom? Would you say? Yeah, I'd say I'm 5 or 6, and you're a little bit farther, so that sounds right. Yeah, I like it a lot. I think most of the people were pretty spot on with the reviews. I think it's earned its Metascore. We've got a lot of nice things to say about it. A couple minor gripes, I think. A lot of people just talk nonstop shit approaching this game, about how tired they were of Kratos' character and him just screaming at Greek gods all the time. I get that, but I also think he had a reason. Like, they literally enslaved him. Yeah. And like did like some really fucked up shit to him. And then now, honestly, Dom, I like Kratos' character even less. And that might be the point. Because instead of being just like a violent, definitely like a male power fantasy type of dude, basically a superhero, a god, is what he actually is. Instead of just being kind of an angry asshole, now he's like a verbally and emotionally abusive father, and he's like just a piece of garbage to his kid, and like that's probably something that just hits close to home personally for me, that I really don't like. But I just don't like kids being treated that way, and especially this kid. Like, he's a good kid. He is like trying to be really helpful on this this journey that they're on, and yeah, he does fuck up sometimes, but he's like 10 years old. I mean, some of the shit that Kratos gets mad at him about, and he's always mad at him.
You're 1,000% right.
Anything nice to him.
You're absolutely right.
Dude, fucking chill out, okay?
I think the point, and I'm hoping,
he's a badass
assuming,
for his age.
I mean, some things are gonna progress in that department. As we get farther into the game, I assume that's
sure.
It's hard to watch. Sure. It's kind of like, damn, like shit, like fuck.
But it is grating. It is non-stop. There is not a single moment.
Actually, from what you told me,
job, dude, and he does some really great shit.
Never mind, I'm not gonna say it.
Little Atreus.
I've already seen signs that starts to change.
Or Atreus.
You gotta see it naturally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, but I mean, 5 hours in, and he hasn't said a single nice word. And he's riding his ass too. It's not just like he's kind of like giving him the cold shoulder. Like, he's a dick to him, and it does get a little old. Whether or not that was the purpose. It definitely has gotten old. that was probably my biggest complaint, which is obviously a story complaint. And I do realize we're looking at like a 30, maybe more hour long story, but I definitely feel like the story is sparse. Like they're giving you very small chunks, and you just have to like keep going with it. Now I'm okay with that because it is a great game and the environments are beautiful, so it's fun to keep progressing and following that story. But it does get a little tedious sometimes, where like you feel like you're just getting into the meat of a cutscene and it's fucking over. So then a couple other little complaints. I think that the combat is not as good as the original God of War games. I think it's pretty great combat, but the combat in the original games is lightning fast, and it's very arcadey, and you can do a lot with it. You can really experiment with it and do a lot of different things. And it's not that you can't do a lot of stuff with it here. It just doesn't feel as responsive. Like, I don't know about you, Dom, but his dodges and his rolls, like, I don't feel like they're as snappy as they need to be. Like, I feel like I'm hitting the button and I'm still getting hit by guys that I should be getting out of the way of. It's just not as snappy, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Well, I've been like thinking about that. I'm like, dude, this shit would not be happening in Bloodborne. Like, you can hit that button in Bloodborne and you're fucking out of there. There's like some enemies that it to me especially looks bad on. It looks really weak on. Like in the realm of Alfheim, the Light Elves realm. There's like a war going on between the light and the dark elves, and you're fighting a lot of dark elves, and they're so fucking quick. Like they fly around, they zip around you, and I just feel like the combat is not allowing me to keep up with them. Like a lot of times I just have to sit back and throw my axe at them, because if I try to get in there with them, it's not snappy enough for me to hit them with my axe without just getting pummeled by 3 or 4 of them just zipping in there and fucking me up. So that would be, I'd say, my biggest complaint as far as combat goes. But there's a lot of fun aspects to it. The axe, they do have a lot of diversity of what you can do there. And throwing the axe is even more fun than I thought it'd be.
It's really obvious. Like, why hasn't that been done like this before?
Mechanic.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think it's hard to make that into your game. Like, that cannot be something that's easy to program, especially calling it back from anywhere that it could go. I do like the environmental puzzles that they use. That's definitely something that's brought over from the original trilogy and is well used here, especially with the throwing your axe. There's a lot of puzzles around that. And then my only other complaint, I do like the game quite a bit. I feel like I'm focusing on my negatives, but I mean, the game has a 95 on Metacritic, so the discussion has been had as far as positives. My only other complaint is that shit, it's slipping my mind. It's going away. It's flying.
The boating?
You're anti-Kratos with a beard.
No, he looks cool as shit, dude. He looks fucking dope. Oh, yeah, that actually helped spark my memory. Thank you, Jared. So, the RPG aspects. You can fucking tell that this is Santa Monica's first RPG. Santa Monica is clearly a very talented studio, one of Sony's best, easily. Obviously, with their pedigree of the previous God of War games, which are some of the best PlayStation games of all time, in my opinion. But the RPG elements, and this is like an RPG light, it's not a full-on RPG, but you can fucking tell that this is their first swing at the plate, because there's a lot of stuff that's just a little bit convoluted, and the way you customize things, like you have you have your axe, you have your armor, which has several different pieces to it. Then you have Atreus, who is basically almost like a secondary weapon, if you want to look at it that way, the way that you can use him, like a secondary ranged weapon.
Yeah,
but then
I don't like that either.
You have a rune, and then you have like a modifier, and then you have certain extra... you have like this extra power, and then you have a modifier to that, and there's all these just kind of little extra little stats that are in there that make it too convoluted and a little too like the webs are just kind of intertwining there, the wires are getting crossed a little bit, and I do feel like it could be simplified and it would make things a lot better, because I'm constantly in combat, and I like in games like this to try to flesh out the combat and be versatile and use the variety of the systems that they give you. But there are a lot of times where I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that I had this extra bonus modified random attack that I'm not using, because there's a few too many layers that are kind of stacked up on top of each other in a lot of places, and like I said, I think that's just evidence that it's their first RPG, and it is a lighter RPG, but it's an RPG nonetheless.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that last piece. There's like some of the what you would call like slots in other RPGs, where like you put a rune in a slot to enhance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of games do it. Like, this game it's not great at it. It's a bit confusing, and that gets annoying, especially when like you don't have much money and you're trying to decide what to buy or what to upgrade, and you're not entirely sure how things work in it. So that was a little frustration there. I'm sure it takes time, and I'll figure it out, but at first it's definitely like, I don't really know what to do with this crap.
Yeah. See, yeah, that's the thing, is I can definitely figure it out, but it's taking me like 2 to 3 times longer than it would in other games, where I'm like having to like teach myself and like remind myself and read a lot of stuff where I'm like, I shouldn't have to be going this far to just get kind of the basic. Yeah, the one positive I do want to throw in that I think
is super like the biggest thing to me. If you guys remember, like back when I talked about Uncharted 4 and all the Uncharted games and The Last of Us as well, how they blend the gameplay into the cutscenes and all those cinematic elements and all that. This game does it 10 times better. And then the gameplay itself is also 10 times better, which I really like. It's very seamless. Gameplay in Uncharted and The Last of Us. Yeah, but this is even better gameplay. Just the combat, the puzzles, everything. The Naughty
Dog games.
And then the way it's blended into the cutscenes and how it all works together, and especially that first fight, that first boss battle, I think like was the best showpiece of like you're in the middle of a fight and like you push the certain button, and then without even cutting, you just go into this finishing move that looks like it's all of a sudden a cutscene, and you're no longer in control, and then it comes back to you. It's I don't know how they do that kind of shit, and that impresses me like a whole ton. And this game just, to me, it just one-upped everything Naughty Dog has been doing in that regard. It's unreal.
That battle that you're talking about is fucking awesome. It's a total superhero battle. It's like watching Superman fight somebody. It's really fucking cool. It is very seamless, I'll say, but the whole one shot thing,
I love
the whole
it.
game is just fantastic. One continual shot, I'd say is actually, I'm not into that choice so much. I think it's cool. Like, there's certain movies that do it. Birdman is a great example, even though Birdman's not actually one shot. It just is made to look that way. But I think it is kind of to the detriment here, because they have, they did motion capture, like full motion capture for these characters. And so every cutscene, the camera is handheld. It's like never on a tripod, right? And so they're like following these characters around. And I've noticed, like, I'd say a good 75 to 80% of the time, you're looking at Kratos and Atreus' backs. Like, you're following them. And of course, you're in the gameplay, you're looking at their backs, because that's how third-person video games work. And then, like you said, it flows seamlessly right into a cutscene. They do a great job at that. But then you're just staying on their backs, and then you kind of see Kratos' head turn, and you like look over his shoulder and can see him. But there's a lot of moments like, it is like the father-son dynamic. And there's one moment where Atreus needs comforting, and Kratos is about to pat him on the back, and then he pulls back. And you see his hand there, so you get the general gist. But it's like, I want to see his face right there. I want to see the emotions on his face. And there's a lot of moments where I'm like, I want to look at their faces here and see how they're feeling. Because, in film, and now they're basically trying to mimic film in these cutscenes, you use people's faces. Like in theater, people are a lot more emotive because not everybody can see the tiny little muscles on your faces moving. But in film, you're so close up that everyone can see the tiny little muscles moving, and so you can be a lot more emotive just with the way that your face looks. And I feel like you're missing a lot of that in these cutscenes. And like I said, you're just looking at their backs a lot. So because since they're walking around handheld camera style, they're not going to like seamlessly go into this cutscene. You're looking at their backs because, like I said, you were just in third person mode playing the game, and then you're not going to have the camera guy just like run around in a circle to get in front of them so that you can see their faces. So it's just kind of the way that has to operate because of the nature of the beast, of what they did with the one cut and the seamless transitions and the handheld camera on the motion capture. So it's, you know, in like Naughty Dog games, for example, which yes, they are kind of trying to mimic, especially with the storytelling aspects, you're looking at the characters' faces, and especially The Last of Us and Uncharted 4, I'd say there's so many really tight facial animations that these actors are portraying in the motion capture, and there's so many unsaid things that you're picking up on that I do feel like can be lost in God of War. And then just real quick, the Last of Us comparison that you made, I do feel like this game, in the way it's portrayed visually, can be take a little too much from The Last of Us and just Naughty Dog games in general. And I'm not the first person to say that. People are starting to notice that a lot of these Sony first-party games look very similar. Like Days Gone kind of looks like a poor man's Naughty Dog game. Horizon Zero Dawn even has a lot of those elements in it. So I'm worried that we get too far into this, and you know, we've got Detroit coming up, we've got Last of Us Part 2, we've got Spider-Man, and I'm just hoping that, you know, these Sony exclusives aren't all looking like they have a certain template that they're adhering to, almost like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they have to kind of have a certain vibe about them, even though they can be their own thing in different ways. So I'm a little worried about that, but it's not anything that's totally detrimental.
Dom, what about you? What are some things you want to say God about God of War?
God about War.
God about War. And what else?
Everything a video game should do, and it does them all really well. It's, you know, like, again, I go back to when me and Jordan were going back and forth on Uncharted 4. Like, awesome. Jordan's like, yeah, the gameplay, though, is kind of like, you know, it's good, but it's not great. You know, but this, right. And it's one of those games, and then you look at, like, Fallout, where it's like, oh, the world and the RPG elements are great, but then the shooting's not that good. And, like, most games, you know, suffer in at least one part of what they do. To me, this game is just, it's everything. It does everything, and it does it all pretty damn flawlessly. And I can't wait to, like, get the rest of the story and unlock more of the combat, because there's a lot. It gets a lot deeper. Like, you can see the tree of your upgrades and stuff. I'm like, oh, I want to start messing around with that. But it's just, man, it's just like, as far as it's like the natural, like, video game that how you might think of it, right? It's like the progression of, like, I don't know. You think of the original God of War game and, like, where video games are going. Like, this is just like a natural progression of the video game medium in the perfect way, if that makes sense. It's not trying to, like, do something purely just cinematic. It's just it does everything that, like, it's just such a video game. That's all I can. I just keep going back to that, but it's good.
It's great. Yeah, it's really great.
One of the biggest compliments I've seen is that God of War doesn't really introduce anything new. It just does everything we already know about to the best that you've ever seen it.
You know, like one new feature that's like, oh, that's fun. And the axe thing is pretty new, but I don't know. You've thrown things before in games. I don't know. Oh, it's so satisfying.
But it is very fucking cool. I'll say that much. Like, it's awesome. Also, real quick, if you're a fan of the series and you've been playing these games, they'll treat you well. It's obviously very different from the original trilogy and then the spin-offs, but there is a lot there that you'll feel familiar with, and there's a lot of stuff that like light fan service. None of it's like over the top. There's very it's more subtle, but like the Fates got mentioned at one point, and Kratos says to Atreus, like, the Fates are not to be trusted. And he's he's referring to God of War Ascension when he fights the Fates. That's basically the plot
that moment with the world serpent.
And
like,
so stuff like that.
I'd seen it before in like a trailer or something. But then when it happened, I'm like, probably because I'm like sitting like 4 feet in front of a 60-inch 4K screen and all that. And like it also does a great job of like all that new technology and the graphics and everything really help it out too. So like, it's a good showcase of like that stuff can help. The more powerful system. Yeah.
Playing on a Pro with HDR is fucking dope.
What choice did you guys make? So at the beginning it tells you if you want performance or frame rate, or what is it? Resolution. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went with resolution as well, which is not what I usually do, especially in third-person action games like Neo, for example. I definitely want that higher frame rate because of the nature of the game, especially more difficult ones like that. But with this one, it does look so goddamn good, and I did want that that super sampling.
So it's not like fully
4K, or I guess not
4K
super sampling.
or
It's
whatever.
Checkerboard 4K.
Halfway there, and then it does that trick again.
So I did.
Right, it's pretty much 14.
I mean, there's barely any
then,
like
the rest
straight up 4K games running on PS4 Pro. And then checkerboarded into 4K, which the checkerboarding 4K is very beneficial. Like makes a big difference, and you are really getting a great experience. Horizon was a great example of that, but also
so far,
I think it's pretty easy, don't you, Dom? I think it's a relatively easy game. Like, I'm barely dying at all. Really just the bullshit with the dark elves. But there's a lot of challenge in the former God of War games.
So the dark elf,
much. I think, with it being a longer
the dark
campaign,
elf
I'm sure
boss
there's gonna be a
that
lot
you're
of
probably
spots,
coming to
but
shortly.
For the most part, I've said
got me once or
easy.
twice. But that was the first time that I was truly challenged.
Yeah.
But we're still early. We'll see.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you play anything else?
Great game.
Let's move on.
No. Is there anything else you want to say about God of War, or do you want to move on to the news?
No, I'm glad we got to talk a lot about it. Obviously, I was pretty wordy there, but it's a big old Sony exclusive, and it's a special game. So, great game so far.
Oh yeah, it's going to be an important release at the end of the year. So great to hear you guys' impressions about it.
Yeah, so far I'd say game of the year for me.
It's just funny to be like, yeah, we're early. Yeah. It's just funny in video games, and you're like, oh yeah, we're early on. Yeah, we're about 6 to 7 hours in. It's always funny to hear that. Yeah. Let's hop into the news here. So the first couple of news stories are actually game announcements by some. They have a lot of interesting ties for the most part, so that's why I'm bringing them up. None of them are extremely large games. They're not AAA by any means, but they're very interesting indie games. So the first one is Stormdivers, which is being developed by Housemarque, which is one of Jordan's favorite developers. So what we know about this game so far is that it's the first game post their studio direction shift. If you guys remember, last year they talked about how arcade is basically dead. Their games that they're making that focused on arcade gameplay just weren't selling. And for their studio to survive, they needed to make a shift in a direction where they could see more success. The thing with Housemarque is their level of quality and craftsmanship has never been questioned. It's just that their games don't sell, which is really unfortunate. So this game, Stormdivers, is multiplayer focused, and it was actually concepted 3 years ago and it started production 2 years ago. And one of the interesting things is in the Eurogamer article, they had an interview with the Housemarque head of publishing, Mikael Haveri, and he stated, you can compare it a lot of multiplayer experiences you have now. And then the Eurogamer interviewer stated, I remarked sounding like Housemarque was doing a Fortnite game, a battle royale game, and he said that's a very good assumption. So it seems like Stormdivers is going to be a battle royale-esque or influenced multiplayer game. Stormdivers makes sense. In battle royale games, you dive into the map usually from the air, and there's a storm that encompasses the map into a little circle. They're very good developers. Like, their games always do really well critically. I'd be interested to see their take on this. This also could be PlayStation's answer to PUBG if PUBG never really comes over to PlayStation. Obviously, Fortnite's doing well and it's on all consoles, but this could be PlayStation's little slice if it ends up being another. Is Housemarque owned by Sony, Jordan?
No, that's one of those kind of like Quantic Dream that people have always talked about them. It would be good for them to own, but I think they're one of those developers, and I think Quantic Dream's the same way, where they choose to stay independent.
Yeah. What do you think about, does this interest you? I know you're not super into Battle Royale games, but Housemarque making one, does that tick the needle at all for you?
So, we don't know for sure that it's Battle Royale, correct?
Well, he said so in the interview. He stated it sounds like Housemarque is making a Fortnite game, a battle royale game, and the head of publishing said that's a very good assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll have elements of that stuff, even if it isn't straight up kind of like how Fortnite is to PUBG, basically just a copy or whatever. Yeah, I'm certainly sad that they're not focusing on arcade games. It would honestly be nice if this became such a successful battle royale game that they ended up being able to have a few people working on going back to arcade games on the side. They're smaller games. Obviously, that would be far enough in the future that it's nothing to look forward to right now. I'm not holding my breath, but yeah, I think I'll end up playing it either way, even though I'm really not into multiplayer games, and there might even be a single player aspect because like Dead Nation, Alien Nation, I'd say they're more meant to be played with multiple players to get further on in the game. Solo. But
pretty fun.
You can try it on your own. They're just hard as shit. A lot more challenging. So yeah, it's just like there's certain aspects where you could feel later on in the game like, yeah, this is probably meant for two people. To kind of like have your back, somebody to watch your back for you. Definitely a challenge, but all their games are. So yeah, I'm still excited for it. I'm just glad that the company survived. I mean, it's a good business decision for them to say, well, as opposed to just like driving this thing into the ground with our regular arcade games, we're going to try to shift it up and see what else we can do here. And I hope that saves the company. I definitely wish them the best. One small thing though, I know personally, I'm already getting this game confused with Helldivers. And Helldivers is a multiplayer top-down twin-stick shooter that looks like it could have been made by Housemarque. So Stormdivers and Helldivers, I definitely think that's going to be a bit of an issue. Obviously, it's not going to fucking ruin the game or anything, but you definitely want like your search engine optimization and just like the mind share that you have with people to be going to you, and we'll see if that causes any confusion. But yeah.
Well, the interesting thing too is I think it will have a unique Housemarque take on it because it was conceived 3 years ago and it started production 2 years ago, which is before the PUBG craze. So though they might be pivoting some aspects, though they may be like pivoting some aspects of the game to kind of fit in with the audiences who love those games, I think a lot of it is going to be uniquely Housemarque, which is going to be very interesting. The second game announcement here is 1111 Memories Retold. This is an interesting game. So it's being developed by DigiX Art and Aardman Studios. Aardman Studios is the studio that created Wallace and Gromit. And it's being published by Bandai Namco, which is very interesting. Obviously, they're a Japanese publisher. So it's a story-driven narrative adventure set in World War I. If you're not familiar with 11/11, it's actually the date of Armistice Day, which was at the 11th hour. They signed the armistice, which was signed by the Allies in Germany to stop hostilities on the Western Front during World War I. A big part about this that ties it in very well with World War I is that the game director for this game was the lead content director on Valiant Hearts. So he has a lot of familiarity with telling an encapsulating story during that time period. So it's very interesting. It has the trailer has a very painted aesthetic to it. Obviously, Aardman Studios, fantastic at what they do. They're very, very talented studio. If this guy was even connected to Valiant Hearts in any way, we already know how great that game was. So if Ubisoft doesn't, keep going with UbiArt and we never get a Child of Light 2 or a Valiant Hearts sequel, at least we're getting this, and this may be something to keep an eye on. So. There's no release date for this. I would love if this released on November 11th, just to match it.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I wouldn't say that's too far out of the possibility. Man, just quick shout out to Wallace and Gromit.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure the creator just died recently, which I was pretty sad to hear because I was hoping that we might get some new Wallace and Gromit. It felt like it was about time after several years ago them putting out a movie, but I fucking love Wallace. They
did have that recent movie that was released early, man, about the caveman and stuff that starred Macy Williams from Game of Thrones.
Right, but it's from the studio, but not Wallace and Gromit. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Just tangentially related.
Sure.
So the third game here, is Eastward. This one caught my eye because it's being developed by Pixel, which is they're a Hong Kong-based studio. It's their first game, but the thing that really got me interested in it is it's being published by Chucklefish Games, who they're the developer of Starbound, and they also published Stardew Valley, and they're also publishing the Witchbrook game we talked about earlier this year, which kind of looks like Stardew Valley, except it's Harry Potter. It's like witchcraft stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Eastward,
same developer, right?
Exactly, yeah. Eastward is being obviously published by Chucklefish, and they describe it as Zelda meets Mother, and it's exactly that. It has a very Chrono Triggery, mothery, classic Zelda aesthetic to it. Maybe not classic Zelda, but definitely Mother and Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger.
Obviously,
SNES vibes.
Yeah, but a lot smooth, like more smooth, not as like grainy. It looks like a modern adaptation of that. The story centers around dual characters, so you're switching back between them. It's an adventure RPG, obviously, and the one cool thing about it is they describe it as soft sci-fi, and it's like it's hard to describe. It's like Fallout meets Blade Runner, kind of like the post-apocalypse meets like future sci-fi, but somewhere in the middle of that. Like it's not super future tech.
Yeah.
The music is incredible, Jordan. I think you would love the music for this game. The music they featured in the trailer is very good. It's just a game to keep
this
around.
Is Eastward the name
Eastward,
of this game?
exactly, yeah.
I have to check it out.
Yeah, and it looks very interesting. We'll probably be talking about this later on. It's currently only for PC and Mac, no release date. I assume this is going to be a game that comes to Switch. I would hope so. Yeah, they always list that, PC and Mac, for a lot of these indie games.
Very happy to hear all the things you were saying about it. Like the combination of all the different things you're describing sounds really cool. So,
well, I mean, like some of the things that they show, there's like a weird like house that's like made in the inside of a dead like sperm whale, and then there's also like they go like underground into this really cool subway system. It looks very interesting. It's really cool. It caught my eye, and I was like, oh, and it's being published by Chucklefish, which they have a really good track record. So, interested to see what Pixel has to showcase for their first game. Let's hop into the two big stories. We'll start off with Valve. As we know, Valve doesn't really make games anymore. They just sell them to the masses on PC. But we had some interesting news last week.
But Jared, wait. What about the Dota card game, Artifact?
Yeah, that's in the works. Also, their Steam boxes that kind of came and went. It's supposed to be a thing and never happened. But last week we got the news that they bought Campo Santo, which is kind of crazy for a multitude of reasons. One, Campo Santo is a successful indie studio that didn't really need to be purchased by anybody. They had a lot of success with Firewatch, which was released in 2016. They're guys that came from Telltale, so they already knew about working with a bigger publisher and stuff, so it seemed like they were kind of wanted to do their own thing. On top of the fact that like Valve doesn't really make games anymore outside of the Dota card game. They haven't really released anything new. They haven't really published anything new. So it was strange to see this. Some of the information, if you're not familiar, obviously Campo Santo made Firewatch. They're currently making In the Valley of the Gods, which was showcased, I want to say, at Game Awards 2017. Yeah, that sounds right. It's obviously the two women going through the ancient Egyptian pyramid and stuff with the camera.
Right.
And it's scheduled for a release sometime in 2019. Valve came out and said that they plan to leave Campo Santo intact as a team. They're not touching them. They're not adding any members, nothing. They just don't want to mess with them. The studio is also going to be relocating to Seattle, which is interesting. And if
it's weird, man.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Campo Santo was located in San Francisco, but I could be wrong about that. And Campo Santo came out and said that Valve had become an obvious match for the studio. And a quote from Jason Schreier's article, because after he had reported this, Campo Santo reached out to him. They stated, both sides spoke about our values and how when you get right down to it, we as human beings are hard, limited by the time we have left when it comes to making the things we care about and believe in. They asked us if we'd all be interested in coming up to Bellevue and doing something there, and we said yes. So it seems like, hey, they're going to give us a ton of resources to finish this game faster than we thought we could. And I think that's the thing. I think the hard limited by time is they want to be able to create these games but not, release 3 of them in a 10-year span. If they're smaller indie games, they want to show people what they can do, right?
Yeah. I'm looking at where they're
located. they're not adding.
What were you going to say, Bill?
But just funding probably to
resources, yeah.
Okay.
Or they could have a team helping them, but they're not adding anybody to the Campo Santo team. They're not restructuring that or anything. So I would assume that we have people that can help you, but if you don't want people or if they don't work out, don't worry about it. You're not like contracted to keep certain individuals or whatever. So I think it's like help if you need help kind of thing.
San Francisco, Jared, you were correct.
Yeah.
Also, Bellevue is where Sucker Punch is located.
Awesome. And this is another part of this is being able to afford it is San Francisco is expensive to run a business, let alone live. So it's like not only can they relocate to a cheaper place, they can get Valve's resources. And outside of Microsoft, Sony I would say Sony probably has less resources than Valve does in terms of bank account, but like still it being attached to any of them gives you mad resources on top of being able to move to Seattle instead of San Francisco. Like
I wonder how that works.
They're probably going to be saving a lot of money, and the
money
they save could be used to hire more people.
If a company
for their
makes
team.
you move to a bigger city, they're going to give you a cost of living adjustment, right? They're going to increase your pay to. Right, they increase it. It never actually matches the extra cost of living.
Do they decrease it?
Like double or triple your salary, right? But then if you move away, what do they decrease it? Like that can't happen, right? So that's why I'm curious. Like they cost savings on rent or
well, I mean,
facilities
it may
and stuff
be like
by moving to a cheaper city, but
well, they already have the overhead to manage the space and all of that stuff. So I think that the salary thing wouldn't change because they already have them set in that. So it's kind of like just a morale thing of like we're moving to a place we have more overhead in terms of the money we can use for other things.
You're basically telling
we don't have to adjust
you're all getting a
raise
raise.
We already had that budgeted,
significantly,
and it's a morale thing.
Even though you're not getting more money, it's kind of a weird. Yeah.
Yeah, like an opposite raise.
Well, they've got. It was saying on Wikipedia they have 12 members, so they could have all just sat around the table and gone, "Hey, we'll essentially be making more money here because we're not spending $5 on a jug of milk."
Exactly. Yeah. And Seattle isn't necessarily like Montana, but it is cheaper than San Francisco. Almost everywhere in the United States is cheaper outside of like New York City and LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's anything else about this. I think it's strange that Valve bought them, but we're hearing rumblings of Valve maybe entering the market again in terms of making games and stuff, which is weird considering we've seen the last couple of years lead writers for some of their biggest games leave. One of the Half-Life writers left. One of the Left 4 Dead directors left. This could be maybe instead of making games, they're just going to be buying some studios to have them make games instead. I don't know. It's very strange. This could be a tax thing, too, of them having companies release games and stuff. You know what I mean? So if they purchase a studio and have them release games, it helps with that kind of stuff. Some weird business back end.
I just hope this doesn't end up negatively affecting Campo Santo at all.
Yeah. And I don't know. People are directly correlating this to, Valve's back to making games. I don't think that's necessarily what this is. I think it's that it was a good business opportunity for both parties.
They're just investing.
I don't think this necessarily means that Valve is moving to purchase a bunch of indie studios, Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I think that's it for that. Let's get into the last story. This one's pretty interesting. So Tatsumi Kimishima, who was the current Nintendo president, is actually stepping down effective June 28th, 2018. So this is right after E3.
Wow. That's short, man. He was not there very long.
Well, here's the thing. Part of the story is he was actually always meant to be an interim. He was never meant to be a permanent solution to Iwata passing. Yeah. So he will be replaced by Shutaro Furukawa, who's a current board member for both the Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. Really, really interesting there because he has a hand in both of the two of the biggest parts of Nintendo. Furukawa is 46, and he'll be replacing Kimishima, who's 68. So there's a 22-year gap there. Which is important for somebody who's going to be the president of one of the biggest companies in the world. And 46 was actually the age that Iwata took over as president. So that's pretty interesting there, too. Iwata had a lot of success with the Wii and stuff, and obviously the Wii U is not so great. But I think this change in leadership was expected. Nintendo always stated that Kimishima was an interim president for the company, and Furukawa was actually appointed by Kimishima. He was his choice. So that's really cool as well. I want to get into some other Nintendo news that came out during their investor meeting, but what do you guys think about this president shakeup? Is it, obviously he was interim, how important is it that this guy had a foot in both Nintendo and the Pokemon Company in terms of being a board member?
If anything, I think it'll be just beneficial because he might have buddies over there now. You know, he might be friendly with a lot of the guys that work there, so you can be like, hey, let's get this done. You know, let's like figure out a deal here, because there's definitely times where the Pokemon Company doesn't seem to want to be.
Yeah, these are also the situations you got to look at sometimes,
Nintendo, so we'll
where
see.
Where a CEO is also a board member on these different companies, and like, you know, that's where sometimes things get shady. I don't think that's going on here at all, but it always makes you curious. Like, oh, he's also a board member over at this place, so is he making decisions as CEO? That, you know what I mean? But I think, like, being that this guy's only 46 years old, and that Kimishima was 68, I didn't realize. I guess it makes sense that I mean, that's getting up there, dude. Like, you probably are making good money, and it's like you're 68. You're like, what am I doing this for anymore? You know, I don't know. Is he outright retiring, or is he just doing something else? Or, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
He's going to be an advisor. He's moving into an advisory role. The interesting thing too that I didn't include in this report is the president of Nintendo of Europe is also stepping down. They didn't really have a whole lot of information about who's replacing him. But he's also stepping down as well. Furukawa being 46, I think, is great for the Nintendo market, having a closer relationship with what's currently happening. You would assume, hopefully, more than a 68-year-old man. He's a little maybe more old school, but we'll see. But cool in that stuff. Investors meeting, not only did they announce all of this president shakeup, they also talked about their sales, and there's some interesting numbers here. So as of March 31st, the Nintendo Switch has sold 17.79 million units. So in about a year, a little over a year, they've sold
PS4 did
17 million, almost 18 million units of the Switch.
Just a few short.
And in
Jesus.
500,000 short or something.
Yeah. Nintendo forecasts it will sell an additional 20 million Switch units in the next 12 months. So they're assuming by this time next year there'll be almost 40 million of these in the wild. You assume Smash Brothers and hopefully that Pokemon game will lead to that. The other numbers that they released, so Super Mario Odyssey is the first Switch game to pass 10 million units sold. It's at 10.41 million units, which is insane. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is at 9.22 million.
Bravo.
Zelda Breath of the Wild, 8.48 million. And Splatoon 2 at 6 million. So it's interesting to see here. Yeah, it's interesting to see here that Super Mario Odyssey, though it had,
October.
It came out...
October 27th.
Okay, did it come out in December or November of last year? Do you guys remember?
Odyssey?
It was October 27th. It was the date.
27,
yeah. Yeah, so Zelda had a 7-month lead on it, and obviously it showcases how well Mario sells. 17 million units and 10 million copies of Mario sold. I mean, it's evident. Really interesting. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe selling as much as it did, too, for it being a port of a game that people already had on Wii, the little people that did have it. It's crazy. Also included in this are bundled copies and downloads, so it includes everything. What I want to touch on with this, with you guys is, do you think do you think their forecasts are right? Do you think they can sell 20 million Switch units in the next 12 months? If so, what's going to help sell those units? Because we're not really sure what's happening in the next year in terms of big releases. And secondly, do you think there will be a game that will sell more than Odyssey on the Switch at all in the long run?
Maybe. Probably another Mario game or Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think you're talking about not knowing what's coming up. I definitely think they're about to blow stuff out at E3. We've got Mario Aces coming up. What the fuck is up?
We don't know about Fire Emblem. We don't know about Animal Crossing.
I think there's going to be two, maybe even 3.
And I think third party is going to blow the doors off too. I think Bethesda's going to make some huge announcements this year. So. Who knows who else? Right.
Well, they just announced a date for Wolfenstein 2, so there's a lot of stuff coming.
There's also rumor that, sorry to interrupt you, there's also rumor that in September when the online service launches, that Epic's going to be launching Fortnite along it.
I have one particular prediction. We can save it for like E3 episodes, but I think Bethesda.
So do you think
one good port that's going to be a pretty big deal? 2 actually.
Okay.
2. One current and one old.
Fallout 4.
Are they going to be old games or new
Fallout
games?
3, I think, definitely is coming. They're probably going to do the whole remaster on all the
current
consoles,
as in
including Switch.
Interesting. I think Fallout Shelter comes out on Switch before Fallout 3.
What if they just did a Fallout collection with New Vegas and 3 and remastered it for all the consoles?
I don't think that could
They're
fit
small.
on. I don't think it'll be a physical release for Switch if that happens. I think it'll be a digital.
Well, you just have 2 carts.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. But both you guys think they're going to hit 20 million in the next year?
For sure.
Yeah, I think so because
an additional, yes. So by next year they'll have almost 40 million units.
The hard part.
Sure.
And then from there it gets easier to sell more because you've already sold so many and it's the talk of the town, and then you got more games coming because
it just builds. Yeah, I mean,
it's the talk of the town.
The crazy thing is, like, if Super Smash and a lot of other games come out, they could potentially reach this without Pokemon coming out, which you're looking at 2019 having a console out there with 40 million units and the first Pokemon for that console hasn't come out or handheld. Dude, that's pretty impressive
Pokemon's
for Nintendo. And it's going to exponentially
gigantic.
Yeah, the thing is like
huge.
Optimistically, we're hoping that it's a new take on Pokemon or at least an evolution. And the pessimistic side of this is like it could just be the step that we should expect, which is a slight upgrade, right? And even if that comes out on Switch, that'll still sell gangbusters. People might not be happy about it; it'll still sell like crazy. So
you're talking about Pokemon?
Yeah,
I think they've said that it's a new generation, haven't they?
No, no, they haven't said that it's a new generation. They said it's a new Pokemon. I
thought they said it's 8th gen.
No,
but
they
even
haven't.
If it was, Jared, I think the bigger point was like.
I'm pretty sure that
not
just got
a
mentioned
huge
this week.
graphical, functional, leap in, what it looks. If it's still like kind of like the top down mostly, you know what I mean. It could still look not that far from the 3DS games.
Yeah,
I think it was on like a flyer that was talking about like get ready for the 8th generation of
Pokemon. Yeah, it was on a magazine. Basically, that magazine was outed because they've showcased information in the past that was completely wrong. I know what you're talking about. It was a section of a magazine, and it had a picture of Pikachu, and below it said Pokemon on Switch, get ready for the 8th generation coming to the Nintendo's new handheld or whatever.
Okay.
Basically, that magazine was at a convention that happens in Europe, and previously, like 3 other times, that magazine has mentioned things that were supposed to be in the next Pokemon game before it came out, and they were wrong. Not necessarily in the complete information, but certain sections of it were just misinterpreted or misunderstood. So basically what people said is it could possibly be that it's 8th generation, but if you look at their track record, there's some language in this passage that's wrong, whether that be 8th generation or the fact that it's coming out this year. Something in that passage is probably mistranslated.
It does say official Nintendo magazine, though.
It is an official release by Nintendo, but they have given incorrect information.
Well, that's fucked up.
Yes, there was a whole thing explaining it that like people got so excited. I forgot what it was, but it was for Sun and Moon. They confirmed. I forgot what it was. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. There was something about Sun and Moon that they confirmed, and then it was proven to be not true. So,
NintendoLife.com says, while this information comes from, quote, an official, unquote, source, this magazine has made some errors regarding future Pokemon releases in the past. We therefore recommend taking this information with a small pinch of salt until any announcements come from either Nintendo or the Pokemon Company themselves.
Yeah. For that, in my personal opinion, being somebody that's played a lot of Pokemon, if it's a Gen 8 game, I think it's not going to be... It's going to be, I think, a graphical upgrade, but I don't think it's going to be the revolution people expect of an open-world Pokemon game or something broader. I think when they do that...
Dude, if we just have stars on there, I'm good. Like, give me something,
Yeah. I think the soft reboot or the remake will be the one where they go wild because they have everything in place that they just need to adapt to a new gameplay system. I think if it's a Gen 8, I think it's just the small upgrade that you
I think it's a whole new thing, man. I think they're just going to blow the world open.
If that makes sense.
It's like full on like third person, almost like way
blow it out.
closer to the character. Full 3D world. I can just see it happening. Like it's going to be a huge deal.
I want I want to tell you, Dom, to like lower your expectations, but the other side of me is like, I really hope you're correct. It's like it's a very tough thing. I mean, I could eat my words, and it could be that. I just knowing the way Pokemon operates, if it is Gen 8, I think it's more likely to not be that upgrade. But if we hear like, oh no, it's like a remake of Gen 1, or if it's like Kanto region,
I'm probably wrong.
Like, just then my brain sparks.
Just like I assume that the next Black Ops 4 won't have horrible microtransactions, and you're like, you have too much faith. And so I'm probably wrong about this one too, but I could just feel it. Like, this is the Switch. Mm-hmm. They're like, Nintendo is back. I'm listening to too much Michael Huber. I'm just getting into this. I could just see them just blowing the doors off with a whole new, like, Pokemon is back, but it's like, it is just revolutionized now. Come check this out, motherfuckers. Like, let's go.
Yeah, I would love that. Because, like, even with the limited, I don't think the 3DS is as powerful as people, like, think it is. I don't think it's a very powerful system, but what they managed to do in upgrading Pokemon throughout that was pretty impressive for the technology at hand. I really hope they take advantage of the extra room to breathe with the Switch. It's going to be interesting to see what path they take. I guess that's it for the news. We'll be talking about what we're going to be playing. I'm going to be going to the Infinity War premiere tonight. Obviously, I think all of us are seeing it this weekend. Jordan and I
very early. Little context.
Well, I'm gonna provide you with some.
I know who he is.
Doesn't know who Captain America is. My God, Dom.
No, he knows who he is. He just doesn't know his character arc.
I actually know.
What is Captain America's
Steve Rogers
birth name?
Iron Man. It's fucking.
Oh, nice, cool.
Iron Man?
I know you put me on the spot. I've seen all the Iron Man movies. I actually really like
Tony fucking Stark.
Tony Stark.
Come on, boy.
Thor. I have no idea, man. Just Thor, right?
What is Thor's birth name?
Yeah, son of Odin. I don't know.
Yeah, Thor, Odin's son, but yeah.
Yeah.
Odin's son.
So as far as what I'm going to be playing, like I said, I don't have to do the MCU rewatch anymore, so I have a lot of time to game. So Wolfenstein 2 is the only thing I'm focusing on. That's the only thing I'm planning on playing. I don't have to dedicate 6 hours a week to trying to catch up on Marvel. Gonna be reading comics. I got access to a couple of interesting games. One I talked about last week.
It sounds kind of cool.
And then the other one is a game called Monster Prom, which sounds very interesting.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of it.
I think it's like a dating sim. I haven't even actually looked into it, but the thing I do know is that it was partially produced by Jesse Cox, who's a pretty big YouTuber and Twitch streamer, and he's his sense of humor and the things he likes and dislikes are very close to me. So him backing this game as a producer and believing in it gave me a lot of hope for it. So I'm interested to see what it has for itself. In terms of
games,
nothing big releases this week, right? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything crazy. We had God of War last week, obviously. Yeah, I don't think there's any releases of importance, right? I'm trying to think. The only release we have is Monster Prom, and then Ashen was assumed to release on the 30th,
Wait.
which was that cool Dark Souls-esque indie game on Xbox's stage last year, but that got moved to the summer. So I'm assuming that'll be part of their...
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
It's like the faceless characters, right?
Yeah, the faceless characters, and it's like Journey-esque multiplayer where you don't know who are the NPCs and who are the people that the guys that jump into your game, and has like Dark Souls-esque monsters in it. That was set to release this week, but it got pushed to the summer. And I think the next big release is the Tropical Freeze port, off the top of my head.
Dom, are you going to be in on Detroit?
I'm definitely waiting for reviews. Absolutely. Because it could be crap.
I think I'm waiting for reviews.
It could be amazing. This is, even with what we heard about it so far, it could go either way. But ultimately, I want to wait for reviews. Yeah. Plus, I'm going to be playing, God of War and Dark Souls throughout that period of time when Detroit comes out. So that might be one I pick up on sale later, if it's pretty good.
Yeah. I'm almost always day one on Sony exclusives, but this one's I actually enjoyed Beyond Two Souls, but still, Quantic Dreams I still think is hit or miss. and of course they've had all this crazy shit going on at the studio. So we'll see. It looks like a decent game, but my biggest worry is just that it's like, okay, there's a lot of sci-fi out there right now already talking about our androids.
Yeah, I like that stuff, and I've not consumed as much
human.
as you.
It's literally called Detroit Become Human, so it's like Westworld and Blade Runner.
Also part of me,
we've already got so much of that shit.
Cynical and like self-victimizing Detroit Lions fan, like it's Detroit versus everyone, and everyone's out to get us. Part of me says like I need to buy this game because it has Detroit in the goddamn title. Not that that necessarily means anything. Oh no, you don't know about people from Michigan.
But you don't even live in Detroit.
Live, like, up
you
north,
just live in Michigan,
or even in the
right?
rich old suburbs of Detroit. All say they're from Detroit, and you know what I mean. No.
Wow.
Question: in this future Detroit that's in the game, did they finally fix the Flint, Michigan water situation, or is it still the way it is in real life?
That's fucked up. That's fucked up, man.
Yeah.
God of War. God of War.
What are you guys going to be playing, though, so we can get out of this? What are you guys going to be... More God of War, I assume?
Yeah, God of War. And, of course, this week, Jared sees the release of one of my most anticipated films of 2018.
Oh.
No, not Avengers Infinity War. Batman Ninja.
Oh, yeah, that comes out this week, yep.
Yeah, well, it's already out, actually. I just watched it. I liked it quite a bit. I definitely think it's really fucking cool the way, this character design's by the guy who did Afro Samurai, which I'm a huge fan of. And it really comes through the Batman, Bat family, and villains designs are so fucking cool with their samurai garb. A lot of great stuff there. I kind of wish it was animated in 2D because it's 3D characters on 2D backgrounds. The 2D backgrounds are gorgeous. The 3D characters are pretty great, but like the lip syncing's pretty rough for the most part, and it just doesn't always gel. But there's actually a couple sequences that are animated in 2D, and they look really fucking good. So I kind of wish that was the case. But for the most part, I'm definitely satisfied with it. It's another great addition to the DC animated movie list. Unfortunately, Suicide Squad Hell to Pay just came out recently as well, another animated film by DC, and was pretty disappointing. Not nearly as bad as Batman and Harley Quinn. It's not trash like that, but it's not very good. So I was sad to see that because I love Suicide Squad, and the last Suicide Squad animated movie they did, Assault on Arkham, which is actually part of the Arkham universe from the games, was really fucking good. So it's kind of sad to see that this one wasn't. But Batman Ninja was dope nonetheless. Just wanted to give that a shout out. About to go see Avengers here in just several hours in IMAX. Very excited about that, especially since this movie is like the first Hollywood film to be shot completely with an IMAX camera. Very pumped. Of course, we've been talking about that for a while now. And then I'm going to be diving back into God of War. And I'm getting closer to finishing Invincible, which obviously I was singing the praises of Robert Kirkman earlier, so you know how much I love that shit. But I'm past issue 100. There's 144 issues now that it's ended, and I've been reading some of the spin-offs and stuff that are about the Guardians of the Globe. So really great stuff. Love it. If you like superhero comics, that's a great one. It's a really cool universe that he's created. So
no, that's
what we got, man.
I'm watching Handmaid's Tale.
Dom outside of God of War.
Look at this one. It is fantastic. It's
nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's on my list to watch. I'm really excited to get to it.
Jordan, I think it's especially up your alley.
So, I was actually going to say, the second season just started. I've
There's
actually,
a book.
Seen the whole first season. I have read the book that it's based off of, which is by one of my it's one of my favorite authors actually, Margaret Atwood. The reason I found her is because a different trilogy of hers was supposed to be adapted into an HBO show by Darren Aronofsky that never got finished. It was eventually canceled, unfortunately. But then they did, obviously, Handmaid's Tale. I don't think they completely nail the book. I think there's some vibes in the book that they don't completely nail. Also, I don't really like the color palette of the show. I think it's just off-putting for me. But for the most part, it's a well-realized world, and it's very well acted. I will say it is very well acted. So
watched them last night.
I'm excited. They've just released the first 2 episodes of season 2, so I'll be jumping in watching that. But yeah, I do love the world that at least Margaret Atwood created, where it's like just kind of a quick synopsis. It's like this kind of like post-apocalyptic almost. There's still like a government, basically like there was a government coup, and so now there's this like totalitarian government, and they have problems with fertility, and so they have these handmaids that are basically just like baby carriers for these higher ups in this totalitarian system, that live as like maids, obviously, in these guys' houses. And so then they have these rituals where the husband and wife are in the room.
I don't know anything about this show.
Yeah, that's like first episode. You're like, what's going on? But yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, yeah,
anything.
this is like really basic stuff, but yeah.
I know zero about the show.
Definitely,
I heard it was good, and I wanted to hop in, so I want like nothing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I have to stop people a lot when they start going on shit like that, so I can really agree with
I was giving you some rope. I was giving you some, and I was like, no. I just want to know absolutely nothing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, then you're in for a treat. I'll just say it's fucked up and dark. You'll see. There's
Hell yeah.
Crazy shit
that Punisher and Legion are my next go-tos in terms of things I want to catch up on.
Fucking Legion, man. I've been meaning to mention that on this show. Shout out to Legion. That shit is so fucking trippy and has gotten weird as fuck. Like, the first season was weird as shit, and somehow season 2 is even fucking weirder, and it's still great. Shout out to Legion.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 95 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. If you can, please follow us on iTunes and leave a review. Definitely helps the show out. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. Even if you don't watch the video version of this podcast, it definitely helps us out. You can follow us at Twitter at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest abbreviated. You can find Dom at Dom's Oreos, Jordan at Melomotus, and me at Jared_, because the guy with just Jared hasn't used Twitter since 2012, and they still haven't deactivated his account. And I'm not salty about it at all.
Yeah, good thing you're not bitter, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Catch you guys next week. Jordan probably won't be on, but we will have a guest in place. Catch you guys then.